Welcome, Cadet. I'm Wing Sergeant Becca Scott, and I'm going to teach you how to play Aeronautica Imperialis. Aeronautica Imperialis is a fast-paced game of aerial combat set in the burning skies of the 41st millennium. In this game, you'll control squadrons of Imperial and Orc planes in a thrilling dogfight, attempting daring missions, and claim victory in the air wars of the 41st millennium. To play, you'll need a gaming mat known as an area of engagement, some tokens to track in-game effects, the rules, some dice, the Ace Maneuvers card, a squadron of aircraft, and of course a friend to play with. What up, Duncan? We'll go over all these things today, but let's start with the aircraft themselves. In Aeronautica Imperialis, you'll fight your battles with squadrons of aircraft, like indomitable Thunderbolts and ramshackle Dakka jets. Each aircraft is represented in the game by a miniature, with a special base to keep track of its speed and altitude and show you its front and rear arcs. Let's take a look at the Thunderbolt fighter, the workhorse of the Imperial Navy. Structure tells us how much damage the aircraft can take. Throttle is how much an aircraft can speed up or slow down every turn. Ace Maneuvers show which ace maneuvers an aircraft can use. Because our aircraft zoom through the skies at different speeds, min speed tells us how slowly the aircraft can go before it risks stalling, while max speed gives us the maximum amount of hexes an aircraft can travel. If it is forced to exceed this number, it might break up. Similarly, max altitude lets you know how high an aircraft can fly. Handling tells us how effectively an aircraft can recover from a stall or from going into a spin. Don't worry about transport and fuel for now, they shouldn't be needed in your first few games. Next, we've got the weaponry. Each weapon has a name to let you know what it is. A fire arc, to let you know what it can shoot at. Firepower, determining how many dice you roll to hit at short, medium, and long distance. Damage, what you need to roll on a d6 to damage an enemy aircraft. And finally, ammo, which is how many times the weapon can be fired per game. If this says UL, it means you have unlimited ammo. Nice. Some weapons also have additional special rules. These will be noted down on their profile. Every aircraft also has a points value. This is used to balance your games and to ensure each player has an evenly matched force. A smaller game might consist of 3 to 5 aircraft, with options for even more in your bigger battles. You can pick from a range of fighters, bombers, and strike craft, with extra war gear options to customize your squadron as you see fit. Setting up your game is simple. First, place the area of engagement. You can see here how it's divided into hexes. Next, set up your aircraft based on the scenario you're playing. In this example, we're playing the dogfight scenario. In dogfight, both players take it in turns to place aircraft within 3 hexes of the edge of the area of engagement, setting speed and altitude as you do so. With our force ready for battle, we can now start playing. That was fast. Every game of Aeronautica Imperialis is split into turns, each of which is split into 6 phases. Phase 1, choose maneuvers. In the first phase of each turn, each player secretly chooses an ace maneuver for each of their aircraft. Phase 2, initiative. In the second phase, players roll off to see who gets the initiative that turn. Phase 3, tailing fire. In the third phase, aircraft that are tailing an enemy, determined in the end phase of the previous turn, get to take a free firing action. This is super fun, you're gonna love it. Phase 4, movement. In the fourth phase, players alternate moving their aircraft, starting with the player who won the initiative. This is the easiest bit to learn, but hardest to master. Phase 5, firing. In the fifth phase, players alternate choosing aircraft to fire at their enemies, starting with the player who won the initiative. Phase 6, end phase. Finally, in the end phase, players determine if their aircraft have recovered from stalling or going into a spin. They also work out if any of their aircraft are tailing or being tailed. Let's look at each of these in more detail. In Aeronautica Imperialis, how each aircraft moves is determined by ace maneuvers. The most simple maneuver is a level flight, while other maneuvers might see you making daring banking turns or sudden mid-air 180s. These can seem a little complex at first, but after a few games you'll be flying like a pro. In this phase, both you and your opponent choose ace maneuvers for your aircraft by placing numbered tokens face down next to the model's base. You'll want to try and pick something which puts you in a good firing position without exposing yourself. See if you can guess what your opponent is going to do. The solid black hex indicates your aircraft's starting position, while the broken hex indicates your end position. Those arrows around it show the direction your aircraft can end up facing. The maneuvers you can choose from are determined by your ace maneuvers characteristic. This lumbering Marauder bomber, for example, can only use 1 through 3, while the nimble Thunderbolt can use 1 through 6. Once both players have chosen all their maneuvers, we're ready for Phase 2. This step is super simple. Both players roll a d6, whoever rolls the highest has the initiative, meaning they get to take the first action in the tailing fire phase and choose who acts first in the movement and firing phases. Should the roll for initiative be a tie, just re-roll. Easy. In aerial combat, letting an enemy get behind you can be deadly. For tailing fire, you need to meet 3 criteria. Don't worry, the payoff is worth it. First, your aircraft needs to have your target's rear arc entirely in your front arc. 2, both aircraft must be no more than 1 point of altitude apart. And 3, the enemy aircraft must be within short or medium range of one of your aircraft's weapons. If all these are true, you are in a tailing position and can shoot in this phase. Starting with the player with the initiative, players take it in turns to make tailing fire attacks at each other. This allows you to maximize the damage you deal in a turn. Watch out though, some aircraft, like the Fighter Bomber, have tail gunners that allow them to counterattack. In the movement phase, you'll resolve the ace maneuvers you picked and jockey for the best firing positions. The player who won the initiative will choose who goes first. Then players take it in turns to pick aircraft to move, following the same sequence for each: throttle, move and maneuver, and adjust altitude. First up, throttle. This is your chance to change your speed. That's how many hexes your aircraft will move this turn, by the value of your throttle. Remember, you can't voluntarily move above your maximum speed or below your minimum speed. To keep track, just adjust the dial on your aircraft's base. Next, you choose a starting direction. Sometimes this is set by your ace maneuver, and other times you get to pick. In the case of level flight, for example, you'd have to start by going forwards. If you choose to swoop, on the other hand, you could turn left or turn right. With your starting direction set, you then move forward a number of hexes up to your aircraft's speed, which you just set on its base, and then make any turns shown on your ace maneuver. Sometimes this means you'll just move in one direction. Level flight, we're looking at you. Other times, you'll turn and then move and then turn again. An important rule is that after setting your starting direction, you must move at least 1 hex before making any additional turns. Now it's time to choose your aircraft's facing at the end of the maneuver. Which way you can face is determined by the ace maneuver you're performing. A stall turn, for example, is great for shaking off enemy fighters, allowing your aircraft to flip its direction. An aircraft must move a number of hexes equal to its speed every turn. If you didn't use up all your movement performing the maneuver, simply keep moving in the direction determined at the end of your chosen maneuver until you've done so. With the maneuvering part of the movement complete, we just need to set our aircraft's altitude, either climbing up or diving down. How high you can climb and how far you can dive depends on how fast you're going. Aircraft with a speed between 1 and 4 can adjust their altitude by 1, while aircraft with a speed between 5 and 9 can adjust their altitude by 2, which you can also keep track of on the aircraft's base. If we're going higher, this is called climbing, meaning we also decrease our speed by 1. When diving, we do the opposite, increasing our speed by 1. Be careful. If a dive causes you to exceed your maximum speed, you must roll to see if your aircraft takes damage. Roll a d6 after making a dive for an aircraft exceeding its max speed. On a 1 or a 2, we suffer 1 damaging hit, causing our aircraft to lose a structure point. Likewise, if a climb, or a mistake on your part, causes your aircraft to fall below its minimum speed, it has stalled and could well be in danger of falling into a spin. We'll explain how that works shortly. Let's demonstrate with the turn ace maneuver. First, we reveal the ace maneuver. Then we adjust our speed using throttle. We'll change it to 5. Choose a starting direction. Move any number of hexes up to 5. We'll go with 3. Maneuver into our final position, then use up any remaining movement we have, in this case, 2. Finally, we've got a chance to change our altitude. We'll climb 1, which reduces our speed to 4. Because we're future fighter aces, this isn't below our minimum speed or above our maximum speed, so we're safe from breaking up or stalling. The sky's a big place, and in Aeronautica Imperialis, you don't have to worry about crashing into other aircraft, even with the orcs around. You can move freely through other aircraft while moving, and if a move would finish in an occupied hex, you simply keep moving until you reach the first unoccupied one. Just be careful not to accidentally fly off the area of engagement. If you do this, your aircraft is effectively destroyed and cannot rejoin play. This is known as accidental disengagement. With movement mastered, it's time to see what all those guns on our aircraft can do. We've gotten to position. Now it's time to do some damage. In the firing phase, aircraft unleash las beams, missiles, and plenty of DACA in an attempt to blow each other out of the sky. In this phase, each player takes it in turns to activate an aircraft to fire following this sequence: targeting, firepower, ammo, and damage. First up, targeting. You're allowed to shoot at 1 enemy target in each of your fire arcs. Generally speaking, this means you'll be firing all your weapons at the enemy in your front arc. This is marked on your base, like so. Some aircraft have turrets or special weapons that allow them to fire in other arcs. Next, we check the range we're firing at. Just count the hexes between you and your target, including the hex that they're in. If a target is 1 to 4 hexes away, it's at short range. If it's between 5 and 7 hexes away, it's at medium range. And if it's 8 to 10 hexes away, it's at long range. Some weapons can only be fired at certain ranges. Anti-aircraft missiles, for example, can often only be fired at long range. Once we've picked a target, it's time to determine our firepower. To do this, we check the range, then check our weapon's firepower characteristic at that range. This DACA jet is at medium range from us, meaning our las cannon gets to roll 2 firepower dice, and our quad auto cannons get to roll 6 dice. Next, we roll the dice. Any score of 5 or more is a hit. If we're firing at an aircraft in a stall or in a spin, we subtract 1 from our dice roll. Likewise, we subtract another 1 for each level of altitude difference between the firing aircraft and the target. So you can see why all that maneuvering we just did was so important. We've scored 2 hits with our quad auto cannons and 1 hit with our las cannons. Keep these separate for now, we'll need them shortly. Next, we check our weapon's ammo. The ammo stat for a las cannon is UL, meaning we can fire it as much as we like. If we were firing a weapon like Hellstrike missiles, we would reduce our ammo by 1. A weapon that has had its ammo characteristic reduced to 0 cannot fire. Now we see how much damage we've done. To do this, we roll the hit dice for each weapon and compare it to that weapon's damage characteristic. The quad auto cannon is a fairly standard weapon, so it deals damage on a 4 or more. That means our roll here has scored 1 damage. Our las cannon, on the other hand, is designed to punch through armor, so deals damage on a 2 or more. We've succeeded in reducing the DACA jet's structure points to 0, meaning we've shot it out of the sky. Some weapons have additional special rules which affect how they work. A las cannon, for example, has the extra damage plus 6 rule, meaning if you score a 6 or more on your damage dice, your target loses another structure point. After a player has picked an aircraft to fire and resolved this sequence for all their targets, the other player gets to pick an aircraft of their own, until both players have activated each aircraft. This brings us to the end phase. Last up, we've got the end phase. This is where we tie up loose ends and check on the status of our aircraft. First, roll to see if any of your stalled aircraft can recover. To do this, roll a d6. If the result is equal to or higher than the aircraft's handling characteristic, the aircraft has managed to recover. Reduce the aircraft's speed by 1, but no lower than its minimum speed characteristic. Then set their altitude to the maximum permitted for that aircraft. If we fail, we're in trouble. The aircraft now goes into a spin. In the next step, we roll for any of our aircraft in a spin to see if they recover. Except for those that just failed to recover from stalling in the previous step, they're not getting out of trouble that easily. To do this, roll a d6 and compare it to the handling characteristic as before. If you roll equal to or above your aircraft's handling, randomize the direction by numbering the sides of the aircraft's base like so. Then roll a d6. The aircraft is set to face the direction rolled, and its speed dial is set to the maximum for that aircraft. If we fail, reduce the altitude of your aircraft by 1. If an aircraft's altitude ever reaches 0, it crashes to the ground and is destroyed. Make sure you make an explosion noise and then remove it from the game. Pew! Last of all, check to see if any aircraft are tailing enemies or being tailed. In this step, it can help to place a tailing marker next to any eligible aircraft to keep track of them for the next turn. And that's a complete turn. Just go back to phase 1 and repeat these steps until you get to the end of your game. So just how do we win a game of Aeronautica Imperialis? I'm glad you asked. The game comes to an end immediately if 1. The game reaches turn 12, or 2. Only one player has aircraft left on the area of engagement. Additionally, if one player is reduced to 25% of their starting numbers or below, only one more turn of the game is played, known as a disengagement turn. During this turn, you can try to slay your enemy for more points, or voluntarily disengage by flying off the board edge to deny your enemy points for destroying your craft. After this turn, the game ends. Now it's time to work out who won. The winner of a game is the player who scores the most points. Points are scored by destroying enemies and scoring mission objectives. For now, we'll look at how we score points for combat. First, you're awarded 100% of the points value of any enemy aircraft that were destroyed in the game, either by being shot down, crashing into the ground, or breaking up. You're also rewarded 100% of the points value of enemy aircraft that accidentally disengage by flying off the board in previous turns. Next, you're rewarded 50% of the points value of any enemy aircraft that are still in the area of engagement but are damaged. You also gain 25% of the points value of any damaged enemy aircraft that managed to flee the area of engagement during the disengagement turn. You don't get any points for undamaged enemy aircraft that managed to escape during the disengagement turn. Sorry. Add up your points and determine who won the game. If you want a demo game of Aeronautica Imperialis, check out the handy list on the Aeronautica Imperialis website to find your nearest participating Warhammer shop or game store.